Before we get started on the 17th webinar of the OpenChain project, I would like to extend a welcome to everyone. It's great to have you on the webinar today. We will be recording so that it will be possible for people unable to attend to dial in later. The advantage of being here live, of course, is you get to talk with our presenter and to find out exactly what benefits the LFX project can bring you. Before the presentation starts, we'll just show our antitrust policy notice. We do this at the beginning of every meeting. The full antitrust policy can be found on the Linux Foundation website. And additionally, if you have specific questions, we do make our antitrust counsel available. This is, of course, to help ensure that everyone is able to collaborate freely and without hesitation. Now, moving on. As always, we dive right into our key topic. We're going to be covering the LFX tools here, which includes both tooling tools themselves, and also tools such as crowdfunding to assist projects to develop. We're going to have a guest speaker. And of course, the guest speaker will have a presentation. But I would like everyone, just like always, to feel totally free to jump in at any time with questions or comments. And with that, if everyone is ready, and I assume you are, I will hand over to Shubhra Kar from the LFX project. I believe you're on the line.
Yeah, hey, Sean. All right. Shane,
if you are on the line, and I saw you a minute ago, just be aware that you're automatically muted, so you'll need to unmute.
Yeah, hello. Are you able to hear me okay? Hello?
I can hear you.
Okay, yeah. I'm going to stop my screen share here and check if there's any problem.
All right. Cool. So I'm gonna share my.
Shubhra, are you okay with the audio?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly. Good. All right, I'll go ahead and share my screen, if that is fine.
Perfect. Excellent.
Okay, perfect. All right, so folks, want to keep it very interactive. I'm an engineer myself, and we've been working on this, exciting toolkit called LFX. And again, it's built by the Linux Foundation engineering team, and as all of us know, right? Like, it will be preaching to the choir if we say the world runs on open source, and all the projects, right? Like, or all critical projects, we need help. We need help in terms of scaling our projects. We need help to with visibility. We need to help to keep a pulse on the entire ecosystem. How does it grow, right? And we have different stakeholders, right? Be it like developers, maintainers, contributors, evangelists, right? Like people in the outreach committee. So how do we create some tools that can help the community at large, right, grow and sustain these projects? So what we have done is we have the Linux Foundation has been doing this for the past 15, 16 years, right? And we have working with the community, we have evolved a proven methodology and to help address these challenges. And net the goal is to transform new projects into the Kubernetes scale projects, right? So create some good success stories along the way. So my team in particular has been working on a bunch of tools. We've packaged that in a toolkit. It's called LFX. And under the hood, you'll find tools all the way from, ones that provide visibility into how the community is doing, how you write code, who's writing code, how are pull requests moving in the funnel, what is your build process looking like, is your channels active from a social perspective, how are you doing in earned media, and so on, right? We have a tool around security, which looks at bugs, and these bugs are essentially doing code analysis, particularly dependency analysis, to find out vulnerabilities in the stack. And when I say a stack nowadays, projects are always a sandwich. Like, you borrow 80% of code from other open source projects. So how do you look at security holistically, right? So we have a vulnerability scanning detection tool. We have an individual dashboard. Think about it as a profile, a community profile, where not only do you manage your different identities, because you could be using a different identity when you're writing code, or when you are signing up for a webinar, or going to an event, or maybe taking a training. um, how do you consolidate your community identity? And also, if you're writing code, can you make sure that if you're writing it on your own behalf, like as a individual contributor, or maybe you're contributing that code on behalf of your company, how do you create that affiliation? So that's what we use the individual dashboard for. We have a tool which is very helpful from an IP management perspective. Projects have different kinds of licensing schemas, and obviously everybody hates to sign a CLA. We see a lot big trend towards DCOs, but for projects that do need to sign a CLA, and particularly for people who are contributing on behalf of a company, we essentially have a bot. It's a easy CLA bot. We have made that process extremely easy to use, right? Like full automation in terms of signature tracking, gating of pull requests, um, like essentially you can allow, like a person in the company can provide blanket coverage to all their employees, or you can just sign as an individual contributor. So we have a bot that makes it easy. And then we wrote a few services which help you grow the project, right? Like, okay, it's very hard to find contributors or maintainers. And many times you have people coming in fresh from college. How do you bring up an organic contributor pool through pairing of mentees and mentors? And how do you make it a paid program, right? So that you have stipends paid out to these mentees, they learn from the experts over a term, and then eventually become mainstream contributors. And we're talking of money, a lot of projects are in need of raising funds, whether those funds are for running your infrastructure, for running things like bug bounty programs, documentation, shared development. So we wrote a crowdfunding app. And then, like, just the project itself, as it's growing, you have to take on more members. Members kind of are very key to the growth of it and sustainability of the project. So we have made an entire automated member enrollment process. And then there are more apps, like a landscape where you can look at your entire support ecosystem on your open source projects. Maybe it's a vendor ecosystem, or it's just the tooling ecosystem around that. If you're running events, think about meetups. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah, was there a question?
I think it might just have been background noise.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, right. Yeah, so we have I'll continue. We have a community events. So if you're looking at doing a branded community events, where you have your event organizers at different cities or locations, think about like setting up your own chapters. And you can essentially run a complete branded event on behalf of your project. And again, if your event organizers want to raise money, sell tickets, we have given that local groundswell of effort. Like, we have built a tool around that. If you're running some courses and you want to grow the skill sets of your community, we have a training portal where a project can come in, publish some courses. We have certification exams that we run, and these are like pretty hard to pass. It's not just an LMS based training system, but a proper certification that you can trust. So we have a training portal for that. And later this year, we are building two big portals. One portal is called the Project Control Center, where as a project comes in, or you bring more than one project, You can automate the entire onboarding, control all your IT needs, do it like self-serve, right? Like the community, you can, it's a one-point console where you can track everything from financials to governance aspects to IT needs to marketing needs. And then finally, in the works, we have a portal called as the organization dashboard. So if your project has a lot of members and each member wants to see their footprint in the community or their contributions, they get a customized dashboard, right? So this is a tool chain. We'll keep adding more tools into the kit. And, I'll only have time to maybe go deep into a couple of them, but provided a time, feel free to ask me any questions. More than happy to answer. And by the way, if you want to learn about the entire tool chain, the website is simply lfx.dev, and you can find all the information there, how to access, um, and you can find all the links to the individual products, the documentation, all in there. Okay. So I'll just touch quickly upon a few of these tools. Insights. Insights is essentially, the name itself is evident, but what are we trying to solve, right? So, as we started getting metrics, we found out that all the Linux Foundation projects, we have about 400 of them, and every project is distributed from by nature, right? Like, it's not that every project is like just concentrated on GitHub. You have so many tools you use in the ecosystem, everything from Jira to GitHub to Git to Jenkins to Slack. And these tools and these projects are very distributed. But how do you get a full picture of the ecosystem? No one tool provider does that. And many projects, in spite of having and growing the community of contributors, the code velocity was found to be slow. And they said, like, we don't really know where the bottleneck is, right? We think there is a clog in the development pipeline, but we really to identify where, how can we move things faster, right, and more efficiently. And on top of it, like as you start growing your community, we are unable to identify the top contributors. Many times these folks are also known as maintainers, and they could be not hobbyists, right? They have a full-time job, a day job, like they work at a company. However, you don't want these key individuals to burn out, right? Maybe they are your reviewers of your code base. So how do we identify those key people, right? And many times it happens that you're putting out great code, but user adoption is either tapering off or really not taking off. But do we know it's like maybe it's the lack of awareness, right? Like how we spread, how do we actually reach out to the community to grow this project? So if you look at, like, there are some classic statistics that we have printed. This is just a snapshot in time. If you go to our website, you will see that we are collecting these across, now we have already reached 400 projects, and we are monitoring, daily, right? So as pull requests come in and we are instrumenting more and more of these systems, we are also reaching out to the projects saying, hey, if you are using a system that we don't know about, give us that information and we can try to get you visibility. So, we support about 12 to 13 data sources today, everything from Git to GitHub to Gerrit to Jira to Confluence to Slack, Jenkins. We just very quickly are adding Circle CI, a bunch of other CI systems as well, and we'll keep going, right? As more and more of these systems we find common across multiple projects, we are providing the instrumentation and dashboards, and these numbers will keep growing up as we get more and more visibility. So far we have already instrumented close to 12,000 repositories, and we're looking at roughly 1.2 billion lines of code. And again, more than the lines of code, like what's changing is more important. And just looking at our community, we know we have roughly closing in on 250,000 contributing developers. Now we have other contributors in the ecosystem, obviously people who are active in social, the voice of the project and whatnot, but these are strictly contributors, right? And we're also looking at different collaboration channels, right? Like which ones are the busiest, Where do people actually collaborate, right? So interesting stats. I think you can check them out. So we have created different kind of visualizations, right? Whether you are a maintainer or a project lead, you essentially get a 360-degree view of your project. And then one of the primary goals is to avoid burnout, right, of the key maintainers. And also you're ensuring project health, security, and sustainability. Or if you are a marketeer, or if you're looking at like an evangelist, better put, and you're looking to attract new members, you're trying to grow your community, and you're looking for every possible opportunity to raise awareness. How well is your social campaign doing, as an example, right? If you are a supporting company, right, like if you work for a member or a corporate sponsor, again, open source is so pervasive, it's like so mainstream now, right? Like, and you're many of these companies, their businesses are now dependent on these open source projects. So but how do they measure their participation in the community? Maybe their employees are writing a lot of code and they are very active participants, and maybe you're sponsoring events or whatnot. So how do you actually communicate your impact within the community, and and actually sponsor your employees to contribute more towards open source? So we have views that we have built for companies, and then for obviously for our developers, right, where to focus our efforts, look at like where that pipeline is, right? So now while we're doing that, there are a bunch of features. We do identity management and contributor affiliation. This is probably the most trickiest part, because people write code with some identity, no identity, all kinds of identity. How do we find out it's the same person? So we have created a self-serve way where developers come in, contributors come in, they identify themselves, saying like, I am so and so, and this is my contribution, and this is my own contribution, I want to affiliate it to a company or whatnot. And that data then reflects on dashboards, right, the community dashboards. And we have different types of leaderboards. People use this data for elections, as an example. Multi-dimensional reporting. We even have marketing metrics, and then once we start building dashboards, every project gets it, right? So build for one project, 400 projects can use it. So there's the shared innovation going on. Security is another tool here. Like, obviously this is around vulnerability scanning. We'll be adding more down the pipeline in terms of secret scanning, particularly code secrets, static code analysis. Right now we look at the entire package, we look at manifest files, find or scan the entire application stack, find out like what native vulnerabilities you have versus like what upstream vulnerabilities we have. We associate that with CVEs, CWEs in the National Vulnerability Database, and then we find evidences, right, of like, are these real bugs or are these false positives? So in this solution, we haven't built this one from scratch. We actually partnered with a company called Snyk.io, and who are essentially providing their APIs for free to us. And then we are also partnering with other companies who are actually really interested in bettering the security of open source. And again, typical things we are trying to solve is like, how do we know the vulnerabilities in our code before others do? And it's a good thing, right? If we know about it, it's not like calling somebody's baby ugly, but if we know what the vulnerabilities are, we can start measuring on like which project is the most efficient in addressing these vulnerabilities. Sometimes these vulnerabilities are super easy. It could be as simple as upgrading a library version, but there is like community shared innovation happening there. And we collect for example, if you look at some of the features here, we have like nice dashboards. We segment these vulnerabilities into high, medium, low. But net, like we also try to gather evidences from other trusted sources. Maybe those are security advisories. We look at like other GitHub commits. We look at bugs that have been reported by hackers on a particular project. We also identify the licenses that are used in the entire upstream chain, right? Again, license compliance management is key for the open source project. And there are we provide recommendations based on the engine, like how these issues can be fixed. And it's up to the developers to actually take action on those recommendations and actually improve the security. And right now we are working on some digital badging on this area that can essentially be rolled out as a best practice across the project. Okay. And just quickly on the individual dashboard, we already have like more than 500,000 people who have visited this dashboard, and they're updating their profiles. Many people just use it as simple as to update their password or update their name, first name, last name, or their company information. But many of our community members are logging in into that system to get digital badges. So we have integrated this with a lot of training and event systems that we run. So if you want a badge, you can display those. Make sense? Yeah, was there a question? Okay. All right. So net, right? Like for contributors, key contributors in the community, right? Like you essentially can create your digital profile, your digital community profile. And obviously, like, you get a lot of emails because you're participating in n number of projects. You can control your subscriptions. You can do attestation around your code contributions and whatnot, right? So think about it, this is a quick snapshot view where you can actually see your digital badges, but it's a decentralized community profile. And you think about, like, if there was a LinkedIn for the community, how would that look like, right? Where you can actually show like the projects that you've contributed to, the impact you're making in the community. There are public and private sections of this profile. Right now everything is private, but we are working on creating a public view as well. Okay. And then obviously you can manage all your kind of email subscriptions from different projects and whatnot. Okay. Mentorship, in this platform we already have about 4,600 plus mentees who have applied, and we have active mentorships going on, and we are paying out a bunch of stipends, and we have about already 210 active mentors. Now these stats are from like a couple of weeks back. That number might have grown by now, but net, like, we are driving organic growth in our community, and most of the stipends are paid from the Linux Foundation funds, but we also have crowdfunding mechanisms supporting this. So if a large corporation wants to come in and make a donation to sponsor these stipends, they're most welcome. We have made it super easy. And we also have a program where, it's a for hire program. So if some corporation wants to come in and provide a job opportunity to some of these mentees who are graduating from the program, then the mentors, they actually can make referrals to these companies who are interested to hire trained people from this pool, and can are committing to keep them working on the project while they pursue their career in that company, right? So we're trying to build that organic growth cycle. This is hugely popular. Almost all the projects at the Linux Foundation are availing of this benefit. And we are also getting some good contribution in terms of stipend donations from a lot of our member companies. Okay. There are dashboards. So you can see nice dashboards around mentees, their skill sets. There is candidate matching. We try to pair the right mentor to the right mentee to the right project. There are performance evaluations. There is a certification you get, like once you graduate from the program. And there are a bunch of free resources and training that we provide. Okay. And finally, crowdfunding. I think, again, we started slow here. We didn't want to create like a crowdfunding platform for like 1 million projects that exist on GitHub. But these are like the small projects who can really help, need the funds to grow and sustain. And in this model, like 100% of the donations go directly into the hands of the maintainers, and they can spend it on different project needs, like everything from marketing to documentation to servers to actually writing code and paying the maintainers. And like the Linux Foundation underwrites everything, right, including Stripe processing free. So it's really 100% goes to these maintainers, but we don't approve every project. So this has to be a super critical project, has to be neutral, It cannot be, a single maintainer project. And, we don't want to give a channel for, somebody to just, a startup to just come in and, raise money by this channel. It needs to support the community, right? So we provide oversight. So it's not that, somebody comes in and donates and they don't track where the money is going. The Linux Foundation provides the tax processing, the hosting, the oversight, the expensing system, and all that. So this is working really good for us. And like, if your project is looking to raise money, I think this is a good one. You should check. So these are a few services. You can find more on lfx.dev. There's a newsletter you can sign up. And again, we said I only was able to show you like 5 products. There are 12 already in the suite, but I'll get quite now and see like if there are any questions. I had some demos, but I don't think we have time. But feel free, more than free to just go onto the site and start looking and give it a spin.
Well, we definitely can do a demo on a topic if people feel excited by it. One of the things that would come up is there are a few tooling projects focused on open source tooling for open source compliance around the OpenChain ecosystem. And often these projects only have 1 or 2 maintainers. I was wondering, how difficult would it be for the projects to get involved with the crowdfunding with you?
Actually, it's pretty straightforward. So, this is like, if you go to lfx.dev, you can essentially find all the tools. So one of the tools here is literally called crowdfunding. And what you can simply do is you need to just apply. And when you apply, you can start with like just point at your GitHub project or a Git project, or if you really want to, raise money around the project itself, or if you want raising money around like a security audit, or maybe it's for an initiative, or maybe you want to run an event or a meetup, right? You have different categories. Like I'm just going to show you a little bit here. So it's a Git. You provide your project name. You can put some elevator pitch, some URLs. We are trying to drive best practices. So we have a big security initiative called the Core Infrastructure Initiative. So we encourage projects to sign up. So I'll just type in an ID for a project, and you can see like it automatically pulls the badging, right? So once you apply to CII, you get an ID, and based on the best practice, we actually display your badge. We ask you to submit a code of conduct URL. And then obviously some branding, this could be your project logo, and then there's 1 to n number of beneficiaries you can add. Now these beneficiaries can be added like on the fly, right? Like traditionally these could be maintainers, contributors, or event organizers or whatnot. And then you set a goal, right? You can say, hey, you know what? I want to raise $1 million, right? Just hypothetically. And you can say, okay, I want to raise $1 million, but how am I going to spend that money? Maybe, do I want all of it to go towards development? Maybe not. Maybe I'm going to spend like, 50% on development, and maybe I'm going to spend, on an additional like 25% on marketing. And maybe I'm going to either run a bug bounty, or maybe I'm going to spend like, 10% on meetups, and maybe I'm going to use like another 5% on documentation, right? So net, like you get the full distribution. And once you do that, you have to just agree to our terms, and like you submit the application. Once you submit the application, we review it, and we will approve it. As you're a Linux Foundation project, so generally we approve the Linux Foundation projects. And then what you'll have is you'll have a card like this show up, right? Which will be the published card. So let's take an example of this project, KeyCAD. And anybody can come in and donate. Now you can see they have already raised like $58,000 since they published last year. And we maintain a ledger, which is highly transparent. You can look into like all these transactions and who donated what. So you have everything coming in from $5 to, you can see here there's a $1,300 donation, right? If you want to click donate, like any donor can come in. They can donate as an individual. They can donate as a company. You can say like, hey, I want to, put any custom amount. I can say like, oh, I want to do it one time, monthly. If you select like an organization, You essentially can put a credit card, but like as an organization, you can have invoice. So you can ask an invoice, and then you can earmark saying like, hey, I want all the money to be going towards a particular goal of the project, but it's really up to the project to decide how they spend the funds. And you can see here, like if I make a $5 donation, the Linux Foundation is underwriting all the platform fee, the Stripe fee. So actually, like Linux Foundation is also making a donation on your behalf, because like, for every $5, we are donating 70 cents, right? So everything will go towards the project. And once the money goes into the bank, then, all the beneficiaries that we specified, they essentially get like expensing system accounts, and they can expense a business, they can file a business expense, or maybe if they're working on a development task, then we basically send them some paperwork that they need to file in. And then if they, let's assume, I'm just making numbers up, right? Let's assume they get paid $100,000, and for business expenses, those are not taxable. But if somebody is getting paid, like obviously they are there are tax rules on issuing 1099s or 1098s. So the HR department of the Linux Foundation takes care of that. So we do all that processing for free, right? But this is helping projects. Like again, if you not at a stage where you have a lot of large companies supporting you, this will help you definitely get off the ground and grow your contributor pool as well. Make sense?
It does indeed. I have another question. So this series of tools you provide seem to offer a lot on project analytics. One thing that seems to come to mind is that people might ask, in what sense may it compare to Black Duck Hub or White Source with project analytics or security analysis?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So we have a couple, right? Like if you look at insights and security, we have two services. So insights is like more or less focus around, I'll give you one example. If I'm looking at, let's bring up CNCF, right? So large project with 70 odd projects under it. We're looking from everything from, lines of codes to how actually the code is moving in the code pipeline, right? You've got emails, chats, pull requests, build data, right? Like you look into project group summary, you have like all kinds of technical trends, like who is writing code, where do they work at, like what's the time to pull request. You're looking at like how efficiently is the code moving in the code pipeline. You're also looking at things like builds, like what is your adoption in the enterprise, like registry, wired Docker Hub and whatnot, right? Looking at bugs, maybe it's like you're using GitHub issues, Jira, Bugzilla. You're looking at, certain things like ecosystem trends, which are like, if I wanted to look at like, hey, how am I doing worldwide in terms of, just my content, right? Like my media content and whatnot. Now, these are like great statistics around the entire ecosystem. And again, this is just for CNCF. However, if I start looking into security, it's a slightly different type of statistics that we collect. Now, in here, in security, we have this scans that they run. Now, we don't have everything, right? We have vulnerability scanning. We are working towards a software bill of materials and a policy. So if you think about something like White Source, their focus is more on the SBOM, or right now like the concept of digital bill of materials, but they look at like um, what is your licensing scheme, and your software at its compose, like what does that bill of materials look like. But if I wanted to look at a project, what we do is like once we scan these projects, we are scanning on a daily basis. So let me quickly show you a project here. So here you can find like all types of vulnerabilities, and then we start detecting these issues. And these issues, like see, these are all vulnerabilities, and some of them are fixable, some of them are not. And for the ones which you can start looking into these one by one, and you can start seeing evidences saying, hey, you know what, for this particular bug, it was reported by Alex Kocherin, and you have a GitHub commit, a PR, and npm security advisory that was issued. There's probably a related CVE. This is a weakness. So we are pulling this information from the NVD, and there's a potential fix, right? And this one is simple. It says like, hey, you know what? This one is like if you just upgrade that js.yaml to this version or higher, this vulnerability goes away. Now, we focus much more on vulnerabilities and your dependency tree. Now we do have the license and the compliance, but we are not really as strong at it yet. So we look at the entire, how is the sausage made in the sausage factory, right? This is your entire app dependency chain, like all the upstream packages you use, right? But then you start looking at just the vulnerabilities, and we break them down into, based on the severity level and what are these packages, right? Where your vulnerabilities are. And then if you really wanted to, so like our main focus is this vulnerability scanning and getting them to resolutions and collecting evidences and finding out how other people in the community have solved that. Now we have some licensing. When I say we detect all the licenses, and like, if you're looking at like a GPL3 and you say like, hey, you know what, which all packages in my entire stack is this license used? I might be okay with a GPL3 license, or some project might say, no, that's not a license that's acceptable in the community. So you can tag that, or you can swap out packages, but we don't really at this point have a software bill of materials. We are working on that. And we are also working on adding, code secret scanning. For that one, we are partnering with another vendor who is essentially for open source. They can't they can't like monetize on the open source. They think like, hey, we should just give it away, but they're essentially giving us those API access. So in this case, like other SCA vendors, if they are open to collaborating with us, we're more than happy to integrate and give this for free to our community. Does that answer the question, Sean?
It does, and we have a follow-up in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
The exact follow-up, it's from Gautam, are there API services for the tools which can be used within an organization instead of subscribing to LFX tools? So can it be deployed locally as opposed to cloud?
Yeah, so for us, like what we have done is like we essentially have an entire CI system, which is obviously we run it on a cloud, right? And we also have built our own internal cloud. But as we go and launch these, we will be right now, like we have this code in our internal repositories. So the number one thing what we are doing is we are right now working on the licensing for LFX, and then we'll open source it. So as soon as we put it out there, obviously, you can download it and try to stand it up on your own. It's a little difficult. Let me give you a heads up. It looks simple, but we spent 2 years building this. It's pretty, evolved stack. Now, in terms of APIs, yes, we have private APIs. I think if there is enough request from our community to open these APIs, my team will be more than willing to. It's just a matter of bandwidth. So we were busy heads down building this, but yeah, we can provide these APIs outbound. But I would recommend, you run those services with us, and with subscribe to APIs. That's, I think, a more scalable way. Obviously, as any open source project, we will open source this as well. We are actually working on like, what kind of licensing to come up with before we, put it out in the open GitHub repos, if that answers your question. But yeah, right now, like most of our APIs are private. We haven't exposed it yet, but definitely if there is interest, we are definitely open to it.
We just had a second person say they'd like the API, so you can see the interest building. Hey, everyone, do you want to drop in with a direct question? Because this is your opportunity to kick the tires on the tooling and or funding.
Hi, Shane. Good morning or good evening or whatever of the world. I have one question, and this is there any limit of this that is this limited to Linux Foundation projects, or can this be any projects that will be included in the system?
Yeah, so generally, like, for sorry. Is there an echo? Yeah. Okay. So for our crowdfunding and mentorship project, we have opened it up. and it doesn't cost us infrastructure wise to run anything. So, and you can see, like, if you go to our crowdfunding mentorship, there are a lot of projects which are not Linux Foundation projects, and they are raising money, they are running mentorships. We are also ran a COVID-19 extended mentorship program where we, actually reached out, and many other projects from outside ecosystem came and ran mentorship. Now, for this insights, security, some of the IT tooling, we actually have some costs that we spend on cloud infrastructure. So that's why for now we have kept it limited to the Linux Foundation projects, because obviously they pay our bills. But the crowdfunding mentorship is open to anyone, right? But some of these analytics where we actually, do a lot of heavy data loading and analytics, there are cloud bills that we need to pay. So right now this is for Linux Foundation projects. So the other services, with the exception of crowdfunding and mentorship, even Easy CLA, we have a tool called CLA. The CLA bot is also open. It's not just limited to Linux Foundation projects. Yeah.
Okay. And would it be possible to contribute metadata to this then from other projects? Because I understand that you are paid by Linux and then you don't invest on others, but if someone would contribute, would it work?
Yeah. We actually have been starting to get quite a few requests now that you mentioned. We actually just launched this in, a few days back, and we already got in like a pipeline of other projects who said like, hey, if we contribute via crowdfunding, would you be ready to host us? The answer is yes. Absolutely. Like that definitely an.
I noticed we have one or two leads of some of the open source projects on the call. Just wanted to check if you have any direct questions regarding your projects and potential collaboration here.
So hi, this is Sebastian.
Hi, Sebastian.
From the Open Source Review Toolkit here. I joined very late, so I don't dare asking any questions that you might have answered before, but it looks very nice and very interesting, and I'm indeed wondering how we could maybe collaborate somehow with the Open Source Review Toolkit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a couple of things. I think some of them, like if you are in the project community and for these kind of, the security parts, you can see like there is some gating here. We basically ask you to create a Linux Foundation ID, and just, when you log in, you'll have to request access. In general, if you are maintainers or contributors of the project, or you are part of formal committees in the project, we provide you direct access, right? Because and this is again for the projects to use. That would be number one. If you look at your profile, like just as soon as you create a Linux Foundation ID, I can actually manage my profile. So this one, like everyone with a Linux Foundation ID gets this by default. Now, if you are participating in, you're speaking at events, all the digital badges, you will get it, right? And then we also get like information about like if you're contributing code to different projects, those all show up, and then you have different membership roles and whatnot. So this is a comprehensive profile. You can look into how you manage your subscriptions and whatnot. But one easy thing would be, one is to like request access. The second thing would be particularly on projects like Insights. You can see some projects have a very rich data set. So if I look at like LF networking, if I look at LF networking, you'll see that they have all the projects loaded in with every possible data source that they said like you should instrument this, instrument this, instrument this. But if I look at let's say OpenChain, we have a few data sources. Now this was based on our best of knowledge. But if you look at like source control, or we got like GitHub pull requests, or we got like GitHub issues. We don't know what your CI system is, as an example, right? If we were able to provide us those endpoints, then we can actually turn on the instrumentation. If you are distributing images, through containers, like you're doing it on Docker Hub, if you know what your official account is, we can turn this on, You can create a support ticket saying like, hey, instrument this, and we'll go instrument it for you, right? For example, if you look at these ecosystem trends, and if you're using Slack, if you know what your Slack server is, or if you are exchanging emails on groups.io, whatever we knew, we already onboarded. But this will be one area. If we have more information, see, like we got groups.io for you, but if you have more information here, we can onboard. So that is one area you can help us.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. Hey, did anyone notice that Hacksung is like a huge, crazy contributor? 20,000 lines.
Yeah. And again, this is like time bound, right? So you're looking at just 90 days. If I look into like, I don't know since when we started picking this up. So impressive, right? But I think one of the things here would be like, you see a lot of unknowns, right? Why are there unknowns? Because we don't know, because we don't have the affiliation data. So the simplest of simplest is, you can see here, if I start filtering out all the people who are in this unknown category, these are many developers whose company affiliation we don't quite know, right? So there is an UI, where you can request affiliations. Now, I already have access, but like maintainers of the project, they can, or like community managers, they can request the affiliation. And you get a screen where you can search a profile and say, okay, this particular contributor works for such and such company. You can do it from here, or you can, the developer, they can just update their code affiliations directly here. So, and then, your dashboards will not have as many unknowns, right? Either they will have like, okay, I'm contributing as myself, or I'm contributing like, you can see here, this is my job history. Like I'm contributing to Project Avalon on behalf of XYZ company from this date to this, right? This would be like, I think this will help you get your data more accurate, right? If you're using something like security and we have onboarded your project, some areas where you can look into, like, for example, dev dependencies, right? So if I look into security and I pick up this same project one more time, as a contributor, you can look into like, hey, I'm going to scan these projects. That's great. First of all, does Shubhra and his team know all my repos? If they do, should I scan dev dependencies or should I not scan dev dependencies, right? This is because many times what happens, when you put this project in production and, when you're building, you have like tools that you put into the dev chain, and maybe those have vulnerabilities and maybe those are false positives. So one thing would be to validate the data. Is this coming clean? Are we missing anything? And these are settings that you can do once you have access to this. So I would say those would be like super short term, where you can immediately add value. Longer term, as we open source this properly with the proper license model, we would be looking for more contributors and maintainers to the project. Like again, it takes a village, right? I have a very small team of engineers working, so we'd love all the help, right, in terms of collaboration. So long-winded answer, but hopefully.
No, that's a great answer. And I really like the fact that as this product set is rolled out, that it's going to be made open source. The information will be available to people to integrate with other stuff they're doing. Though, of course, I see all the Linux Foundation projects naturally going through LFX, but other people in other places. I think a few of our people, maybe even on this call, their projects are hosted in places like Eclipse Foundation.
Got it. Yeah, and again, as I said, like I don't know, I had spoken with someone from the Eclipse IDE project. Initially, they had some interest on using our crowdfunding platform, but again, this was like a year and a half, 2 years back, when our product wasn't that mature. But since then, we have come a long way. And as I said, right, we already have projects that are hosted on a platform which are not necessarily Linux Foundation projects. So we are definitely open to that, right? So I would like my ID is scar@linuxfoundation.org. So if any one of you is interested, drop me a note. I'll be more than willing to, jump on a call with you guys and discuss more.
That's super cool. Okay, everyone, any further questions? Again, this is your chance.
Yeah, it's me again, Sebastian. Sorry. One follow-up question. I saw that the security page is powered by Snyk, actually, and I'm just wondering, Snyk being a commercial provider of security vulnerabilities, as far as I know, we were also looking into adding Snyk as a provider into the open source review toolkit. And with ORT also being a Linux Foundation project, does the Linux Foundation have some special agreement with Snyk that we can use their data more or less freely, or is there some kind of, yeah, I don't know, subscription or special conditions for Linux Foundation projects?
Yeah, so what we did with Snyk, as I said, like again, Snyk is right now our strategic partner, and then we are also doing a few more partnerships with other vendors in the space, but essentially they gave everything for free to us. Now, when I say free, essentially they have opened up all their private APIs. So when we build this tooling, we essentially built it as a wrapper around Snyk, but then we added some stuff on our own, because if you use Snyk as a individual developer, you are essentially getting, authenticating with your own GitHub credentials or whatever, and you're getting like a view on just your repos. Now, as a project, what we did is like a project could be made up of hundreds of repos, and a project group could have multiple projects. So what we did is we contextualized all that. We integrate directly with Snyk. We are able to get all their features in, and they're essentially providing this service free to the Linux Foundation via this security service. And we started with Snyk, but then we are, as I said, like we are right now very shortly working on code secrets, and we are also looking at static code analysis. And in those areas, we might actually collaborate with some other vendors as well. But security for us is more of a, integrate versus build. Insights, there was nothing out there. So we built it from scratch. But security, like it's a very mature space, and I'm going to never claim that I have a team of security experts. So that's why like we are collaborating more with the, like-minded vendors in the ecosystem who are ready to, give it away almost for free to us.
This is an observation outside of the nitty-gritty, but it seems like our leverage as a community is being beneficial on things like building out the data set and so on, that providers are perhaps more open now to collaborating on providing stuff than they may have been in the past. Not pointing at any company, but just a general observation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And we also involved some of the CA vendors in we did a study with Harvard. We have been continuing on the LISH program with them, and we actually invited quite a few SCA vendors to that program. And as through that program, a lot of these vendors agreed to, collaborate and give away a little bit of their secret sauce to us for relatively zero to no cost.
That's fantastic. All right, everyone, we're nearly out of time. Any final question you'd like to bring to the table?
This is Jeff here. I'm sorry I joined a little late here. I just had one question, that comes up a lot, which is, say we have another Heartbleed. It comes up tomorrow. We all wake up, and there's the Sev 10 vulnerability of the day. Is there an easy way, if say I have a bunch of projects under me or a bunch of releases? One of the common requests I always hear is, show me every product and every release that's affected by this, new named vulnerability of the day. Is that there right now, or is that a feature that we should expect to see for the projects that are being monitored?
Yeah, so we have the release information on a branch to branch basis. Like, let's say, your project has 100 repos, and each repo kind of follows a different release cadence. We have the branch information, we have the release information, we have the vulnerability information. I don't have there is a visual correlation I can show you on the tool, but the kind of report you're looking for explicitly, I have the data, but I don't have a view. Okay. But we could build it for you. right? Like we can build such a view if you feel that can be highly, useful to the community. But I'm sitting on the data. I have the data for sure.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Alrighty. If there are no further questions, it's time to say thank you so much for coming on the call, Shubhra. I know it's late at night, Pacific time. Much appreciated to have you here live. And thank you to the whole audience for being present.
Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, it's always fun to talk to the community. Like, it's actually validation that whatever we are building is actually of some use. So thank you.
Well, the information on this webinar is going to be disseminated across multiple work groups around the world. So no doubt you can expect some contacts in the near future. You just got a thumbs up as well from Gautam. All right, everyone, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.